2010 17-inch MacBook Pro keyboard replacement. Please note the difficulty of this replacement. We'll be removing the logic board and the DVD drive. This is one of the most difficult replacements on this model. Start off by shutting down and flipping over your MacBook. Remove the cover that's fastened with 10 Phillips head screws. Remove the 7 Phillips head screws that are short first, starting in the top left and going around the contour of the MacBook. Now the 3 long Phillips head screws. Lift and remove the cover. Begin by disconnecting the battery first. Logic board removal. Start off by removing the left fan. The left fan is attached with 3 Phillips head screws. Go ahead and unscrew those screws, but leave them in place, as this will make it easier to track all the screws that you take apart. Lift up on the fan and disconnect it from the logic board. Remove the right fan. It's also connected with 3 Phillips head screws. This particular fan didn't want to come out, so we went ahead and disconnected each Phillips head screw and put it aside. Then we disconnected the fan and lifted it up. We put the screws back into the respective holes after removing the fan. Again, this makes it easier to track all the screws. Remove the 2 cable guards that are fastened with 2 Phillips head screws each. Familiarize yourself with the 12 connections going around the contour of the logic board. We'll be disconnecting them all in detail in just a moment. Let's start off with disconnecting the keyboard backlight by lifting up the eyelash lever and pulling out the connection. Next, let's disconnect the Wi-Fi and EyeSight cable. Disconnect the DVD drive. Disconnect the speaker. Now disconnect the LED sleep indicator. It has a little lever you have to pull up. Disconnect the trackpad. Now the keyboard. The keyboard also has a small lever. Pull that up before pulling out the keyboard. Disconnect the express port 34 connection. Disconnect the hard drive disk. Disconnect the battery life indicator. Now we can disconnect the LVDS cable. Gently lift up on the lock and then slide it to the right. Now that all the connections have been removed, locate the 6 Phillips head screws that are securing the board in place. Go ahead and remove those 6 Phillips head screws. Push away any of the cables and go ahead and start to lift up the logic board. Once you start lifting up the logic board, you can go ahead and flip it over. There's one more connection in the back. Disconnect the DC in power board. This will release the logic board. Keyboard removal. With the logic board out of the way, go ahead and remove the covers that are covering the Bluetooth. Disconnect the Bluetooth antenna. You can do this by simply prying out the cable. Disconnect the Bluetooth data cable. Remove the T6 case bracket. You will need a T6 screwdriver for this. Remove the 3 Phillips head screws that are securing the DVD drive. One in the top, one in the bottom left, and one in the back. Lift up the drive. Leave the screws on top. This will be easy to track them. Remove the 2 Phillips head power button screws. With the power button screws removed, remove the antenna screw that's being held to the bracket. This will allow you to pull out the power button. Free the power button by tracing out the cable. Remove the 3 Phillips head speaker screws. You can leave them in place. This will be easier. By unscrewing them about 4 or 5 turns each, they'll release the screw. With the screws undone, you can go ahead and lift up and remove the speaker. Remove the 2 Phillips head mid-wall screws. Again, you can unscrew them but leave them in place. This makes it easier to track the screws. You can now lift up and remove the mid-wall. Pry into the keyboard cover with a set of tweezers. Lift it up. Depending on the nature of the spill, this could be difficult and the bottom black layer can get torn during this process. It's okay because we'll be replacing the cover. Remove the 51 keyboard Phillips head screws. This will take some time. They're all identical screws and they're magnetized. Once you remove the 50 screws, there's one screw under the express card. Go ahead and remove the hard drive bracket that's held in with 2 Phillips head screws. This will expose the express card. Peel back the hard drive connection and the battery indicator connector. Remove 3 short express card screws first. Now on the left side, there are 2 long express card Phillips head screws. Remove those next. With the express card unscrewed, you can go ahead, lift it up and move it out of the way. Now you can access the last keyboard screw. go ahead and lift up and remove the keyboard. If you missed some screws during this process, go ahead and track them down and remove them. You should now be able to lift up the board. Clean the keyboard socket. For this example, I'm just going over it with a toothbrush, but you should use some type of cleaner to make sure that everything is cleaned off. Keyboard reinstallation. On your replacement keyboard, go ahead and separate the backlight and the keyboard cover. Go ahead and insert the new keyboard into the keyboard socket. Make sure it's nice and flush. At this time, also note that some keys might get trapped and will have to be pried out later when the installation is complete. Reinstall the 51 Phillips head screws. This takes time and patience. Once the 51 screws have been reinstalled, install the keyboard cover and backlight. There are 3 layers: the backlight layer, the plastic layer, and the shadow layer. Use the 2 pinholes to align the keyboard cover correctly. Reinstall the express card first. Attach the 2 long Phillips head screws on the left side first, then the 3 short Phillips head screws. Tuck in the power button. Put it into position. You can now attach the 2 Phillips head power button screws. Reinstall the Bluetooth cable into the bracket. Reinstall the mid-wall. It's attached with 2 Phillips head screws. Install the right speaker. Put it into its socket. Then secure the 3 Phillips head screws. Reinstall the DVD drive. Place the 2 outer Phillips head screws into the holes. This will make it easier when you drop the drive into the socket. Secure the 3 Phillips head screws. Reconnect the Bluetooth antenna cable. Place it over the connection and pop it in. Reconnect the Bluetooth data cable. Place the covers back on, the Bluetooth cover and the bracket cover. Reinstall the T6 case bracket. you need a T6 screwdriver for this. Reinstall the hard drive bracket. Secure the 2 Phillips head screws. That's it. Now let's reinstall the logic board. Logic board reinstallation. Start off by reconnecting the logic board to the DC in power board. Now flip the board over and insert the logic board into the case. Pry any of the cables out of the way. You should now go over all of your connections and make sure that none of them are stuck. Right here we spotted that the LED sleep indicator was trapped, so we went ahead and pulled that out with tweezers. There's another trap cable. Okay, we can go ahead and secure the logic board with the 6 Phillips head screws now. The first cable we're going to reconnect is the keyboard backlight cable. It's located near the left fan. Make sure that the eyelash is up on that socket and push the cable in. Then put down the eyelash, locking it in place. Insert the left fan. Secure it with 3 Phillips head screws. The screws should have been left in place. Go ahead and reconnect the fan. Install the right fan. Again, securing it with 3 Phillips head screws that were left in place. Reconnect it to the logic board. It is important not to forget these connections. Make sure that they're nice and tight. Connect the LVDS cable next. Gently slide it into the socket. Be very careful, as this is one of the most fragile connections. Lock it in. Connect the battery light indicator next. It has an eyelash. Pull up the eyelash. Gently work the cable into the socket. Once it's all the way in, push down on the eyelash and lock it in. Now reconnect the hard drive by simply placing it over and pushing down. Reconnect the express card. This cable also has an eyelash. Lift it up. Push the cable into the socket and put down the eyelash. Next, we'll connect the keyboard. The keyboard is one of the most difficult connections on the entire logic board. It takes a lot of work to get the keyboard to align properly. Working it left to right, make sure it fits all the way into the socket. Once it's all the way into the socket, you can put down the eyelash. Next, the trackpad. Put it over the socket and just push it in with your finger. You should feel it click. Next, we're going to connect this sleep LED light indicator. It also has an eyelash. Make sure that the eyelash is up. Work the connection into the socket and put the eyelash down. Next, the speaker. Put the speaker over the socket and click it in. Connect the DVD drive. Also, just simply click it in. Connect the EyeSight Wi-Fi cable. Work it left to right, going into the socket. Now we'll reinstall the cable guards. There are two of them. They're both secured with two Phillips head screws. You can now reconnect the battery. Gently slide it into the socket. Look down and get a better angle, as you need to make sure that this goes in correctly. Place the cover back on. Reinstall the 3 long Phillips head screws first. Then reinstall the 7 short Phillips head screws.